So we should be able to get started here now. On the video, I apologize. The actual YouTube live video doesn't seem to be wanting to operate very well right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a nice video for us and go over, more importantly, what would be considered to be the original 7 wonders of the world. So, like I said in an earlier video, if you've been watching any of my content at all recently, is me and my wife were thrifting, and I walked across this particular print here, which is known as the Nova Totius Terrarum Orbis Tabula. We'll say for lack of better words, because, like I've said, that is an absolute mouthful. So, it has a lot of esoteric meaning to it, obviously, at face value. And what's interesting is thinking about this topic in the context of how modern maps give a specific depiction of how old world sites, such as the 7 wonders of the world, which we have pictured below, and are known as, if you're not familiar with this topic, or the original 7 wonders of the world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which you can see there, Pharos. You can go do your own research for yourself and see that it actually will translate directly into that, and really think about, in the context of the old world, how Pharaoh correlates with what we know about the modern pyramids of Giza, and how that actual pyramid is pictured right here with these 3 obelisks don't specifically look anything like what we would recognize in the modern 7 wonders of the world, which begs the question, with the false history narrative, what is the actual pyramids or location of said pyramids? Now, of course, the heliocentric model and other models and other quote-unquote geocentric models, or maps, if you will, all have different layouts to them. Now, is that to say that there aren't truths or more truths in certain maps than others? Absolutely. But that's the job of making these kind of videos, is to get into these kind of topics and openly discuss them and see what we can collect together, see what new answers or details in these things we can find together. So, like I said, this is a great example for people who say, why does the shape of the earth matter? Because if your reference of quote-unquote his story is skewed, then individuals can't get a good grasp or center of reality. It's also interesting to note how these specific locations interact with the importance of the zodiac and what would be called the pagan religions of today, which would tie into what we call heliocentrism, right? NASA. It's also important to not just NASA, but just the entire narrative of space itself, right? It's also important to not just take in the tangible aspects of these maps, but also constantly reaffirming the obvious esoteric or hidden meaning of such imagery. That is wherein lies the true nature of said images, and to put it bluntly, the alchemical nature. According to Wikipedia, alchemy is an ancient branch of natural philosophy, a philosophical and photoscientific tradition that was historically practiced in China, India, the Muslim world, and Europe, quote unquote, right? Now, of course, this is a general Wikipedia definition of alchemy, but it covers the description for the casual researcher. When you look into the origins of alchemy, which is more than likely the first form of what people call the sciences, many other definitions or understandings accompany the word in viewing transmutation, or for simpler terms, the rebirth of the mind, body, and soul, etc., or to transcend the lower vibrational realities, which is where you start seeing with more geocentric models, you start to see that kind of layered design going on. Different quote unquote dimensions, if you will. But anyway, I digress. I wanted to more focus on the seven wonders of the world, or old world seven wonders. And like I said before, this right here, or as I said in an earlier video, this right here is the Lighthouse of Alexandria. So just even doing a basic look into this on Google or any other major search engine, right? It'll pull up the Lighthouse of Alexandria, or Alexandria in Egypt. But like I've already said, really think about not the modern day depiction of what Egypt is, but maybe even over here in what we would consider the modern day United States. So the Lighthouse of Alexandria, also called the Pharos of Alexandria, one of the seven wonders of the world and the most famous lighthouse in antiquity. It was a technological triumph and is the archetype of all lighthouses since, built by Sesostris of Cnidus, perhaps for Ptolemy I Soter. It was finished during the reign of Soter's son Ptolemy II of Egypt in about 280 BCE. The lighthouse stood on the island of Pharos, there's your word, in the harbor of Alexandria, is said to have been more than 350 feet or 110 meters high. The only taller man-made structure at the time would have been the pyramids of Giza. Much of what is known about the structure of the lighthouse comes from the 1909 work by Hermann Thursch, Pharos, Antique Islam, and the Occident. According to the ancient sources consulted by Thursch, the lighthouse was built in three stages, all sloping slightly inward. The lowest was square, the next octagonal, and the top cylindrical. A broad spiral ramp led to the top where a fire burned at night. Some descriptions report the lighthouse was surmounted by a huge statue, possibly representing either Alexander the Great or Ptolemy I Soter in the form of the sun god Helios. Though it was well known earlier, the lighthouse does not appear in a list of wonders until the 6th century CE. The earliest list gives the walls of Babylon instead. In the Middle Ages, Sultan Ahmed ibn Tulun replaced the beacon with a small mosque. The lighthouse was still standing in the 12th century, but by 1477, the Mamluk Sultan Qutb was, I'm probably completely butchering that. Let me keep on going. Was able to build a fort from its ruins. In 1994, archaeologist Juan Vez Emperor, founder of the Center for Alexandrian Studies, Centre d'Etudes Alexandrines, made an exciting find in the waters of Pharos Island. He had been called in by the Egyptian government to map anything of archaeological significance in this underwater area before a concrete breakwater was erected over the site. I'll say. He mapped the location of hundreds of huge masonry blocks. At least some of these blocks are believed to have fallen into the sea when the lighthouse was destroyed by an earthquake in the 1300s. And there's your 1300s right there. If you know anything about the Rosicrucians or the Jesuit order, then you'll understand that it's understood that the Knights Templar, disbanded during that time and created what would be considered the modern-day Rosicrucians or Jesuit order. Anyways, let me keep on going. A large amount of statuary was also discovered, including a colossal statue of King dating to the 3rd century BC that was thought to represent Ptolemy II. A companion statue of a queen as Isis has been discovered nearby in the 1960s, and these statues representing the deified Ptolemy and his wife Arsinoe are thought to have been placed just below the lighthouse facing the entrance to the harbor. Based upon these finds, the Egyptian government abandoned the idea of a breakwater and planned instead of an underwater park where divers could view the many statues, stones, sphinxes, and remains of the lighthouse. Now, with all that being said, if we look at the lighthouse itself in the imagery, just give me a second, guys. Yeah, so if we go over here to the lighthouse, of course, you have the 3 ships. It's me like you got this island back in the background, and you have a leading, kind of that picturesque look of a passageway or gate going over water to a castle. So this really begs the question with the origin, and in my opinion, personally, of what lighthouses are, or the importance of lighthouses, because this is go back to Alexandria, and if you know anything about what's been said about the mainstream about Alexandria, is that the library was burnt there, so a lot of knowledge was lost to us, if you will. But that's just the mainstream narrative. So right here next to it, of course, you have Jupiter Olympicus, or the Temple of Zeus, or statue of Zeus, if you will. And let's go to the page I was just reading off of and go over a general definition. I think it's good to go over a general definition, even if it's off Wikipedia or the internet. A lot of what is in it definitely has room to be investigated, as anything does. But most of the time it covers a general idea of it, especially for people that are new to this information that might not be hardcore researchers such as myself or other quote-unquote hardcore truthers out there really looking into this stuff that know their stuff as much as they possibly can. So let's go down here to the statue of Zeus. And I mean, we're all familiar with, or I hope you're familiar with, in Greek mythology, you know, Jupiter was associated with Zeus, and he had an entire statue or mausoleum built around the statue as well, and that's what is pictured in that image. And here we go, statue at Olympia. So I just want to notate something while I'm doing this commentary. If you follow me on TikTok at flatout_truth_92, or here, or follow anyone else that talks about the old world or Tartaria, pay attention to how this is Greek mythology, but also with that being said, just how it is what would be considered Tartarian Antiquitech architecture, right? It's in that archway. So you have that spiritual geometry there that needs to be paid attention to, and also a lot of other occult imagery needs to be taken into consideration, or like I said earlier in that quick introduction, the alchemical or esoteric hidden meaning behind these things. So statue of Zeus at Olympia, it states, is a large ornate figure of the god on his throne, made about 430 BCE by Phidias of Athens. Of course, that's the mainstay understanding of that. Very vague, actually, opposed to the other one. I can't remember if I pulled up or not. Let me check. I had some other sites pulled up other than Britannica. But here we are. Jupiter Olympicus. So you have to also pay attention to how a lot of this is written in Latin, so it's just not going to come out the exact way that it probably should be enunciated. So let's go to this here. Temple of Jupiter Olympius. Really now? So I think this is a little ironic. You know, I'm talking about, like I said, the pagan or the hidden, or you know, the mainstream sciences and them worshiping these heliocentric gods, right? And I'm literally just looking for information on that specific old world wonder, and I go to this website here, Scientific American. Never even seen this website before, never even heard of it. It brings me to the sciences, the Temple of Jupiter Olympius. And telling what the actual, I think you have to subscribe to the article is, but it's just funny how it's kind of pushed like that. Right in your face. So here we go, 1821. Let's get another image here. And please comment down below. Like I said earlier, I wanted to take this video and go live with it. I'm having to kind of turn this into a regular screen share overview, but please feel free to comment if you have anything you want to add on. Of course, always be respectful and have a good time. So speaking of alchemical in the Temple of Jupiter, check out this for a second. Wow. There's a lot going on here. Of course, you have that as above, so below symbolism going on. You have, it appears to be Jupiter, Zeus holding an angel in his right palm while his left hand is extended upward holding a rod. And I can't zoom in on this specific image, but it looks like he's holding the rod in a very interesting fashion. There's a lot of other stuff going on there. I wish I could zoom in. It looks to me like you have some more angels kind of coming around at the foot. But yeah, all this stuff ties into the alchemical. Definitely. It's just this time period is just steeped in mystery. It's almost like the more you study into it, just the more you actually notice. It's just absolutely crazy. It's fascinating. But anyways, that's all I'm really seeing on that specific translation while I'm typing in Jupiter. I don't want to linger on one specific image too long, but I feel like this is probably one of the most known out of the original 7 wonders of the world. But let's go ahead and move on to the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. And I feel like this one is really cool because it actually says Mausoleum in Latin. And it is interesting to note that it's the original word, or way we say today, mausoleum, but it has a old world connotation to it. Of course, you have mausoleum here. A mausoleum is an external freestanding building constructed as a monument enclosing the burial chamber of a deceased person or people. A mausoleum without the person's remains is called a cenotaph. The mausoleum may be considered a type of tomb, or the tomb may be considered to be within the mausoleum. And that's a very Tartarian looking building there, because that is actually the mausoleum at Halicarnassus. So let's go to, this is actually the origin where a lot of this stuff, in my opinion, comes from, coming from these old world places, because these are the original maybe prints of it potentially. I mean, it's there's a lot of evidence to that. But so let's go to the here we are, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, monumental tomb of the Anatolian king Mausolus, built by his widow Artemisia. Colossus, and then they have the Colossus Rhodes going right below it. But that's a very vague understanding of that. It just looks extremely steeped in mystery, especially just the design of it. So let's see when we go into Google here, guys. Just give me 1 second. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. Sorry for the lagging, y'all. I just got so many tabs open tonight, but I just wanted to really make sure I had a lot of good material lined up, so please bear with me. There we are. So I didn't even mean to put location in, but let's delete that. Don't need that. That is an interesting thing to look into, the actual locations of a lot of these places. I pulled it up anyway, that's cool. There we go. Brigacanic version. Of course, you can't trust half of these sites, but like I said, you can usually get a general idea of a lot of this stuff, or get enough to go dig into it yourself long enough. So here we have the Mausoleum. Halicarnassus, also spelled Halicarnassus, one of the 7 wonders of the world. The monument was the tomb of Mausolus, ruler of Lagging. There we go. The monument was the tomb of Mausolus, ruler of Korea in the southwestern Asia Minor. It was built in his capital city, Halicarnassus, between about 353 and 351 BCE by his sister and widow Artemisia II. The building was designed by the Greek architects Pythias. Sources spell the name variously, which has, of course they do, which has cast doubt on his identity, and Satyrios. The sculptures that adorned it were the work of 4 leading Greek artists, Scopas, Baracus, Leocharis, and most likely Timotheus, each of whom was responsible for a single side. According to the description by the Roman author Pliny the Elder, 23 through 79 CE, the monument was almost square with a total periphery of 411 feet. It was bounded by 36 columns, and the top formed a 24-step pyramid surmounted by a 4-horse marble chariot. Fragments of the mausoleum sculpture that are preserved in the British Museum include a frieze of battling Greeks and Amazons, and a statue 10 feet or 3 meters high, possibly of Mausolus. The mausoleum was probably destroyed by an earthquake between the 11th and 15th century CE, and the stones were reused in local buildings. So, once again, this seems to me like a potential location, or wherever the actual location of this specific site was at whatever time, it's probably steeped in mystery, with a lot of these places, because the general gist is there's a lot of power behind these locations. So if there's a lot of power behind those locations, then the knowledge of where said location is powerful. So let's click on images and see if we can pull up any other cool pics of it. Cool pics, man. Oh, yeah. I know if it just clicked out completely and just took out the mausoleum, but we need the actual mausoleum of Halicarnassus. We don't need just... Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Boom. Yeah. We're gonna get a lot of mainstream ideas where this thing's this thing that, but there ain't no telling. I mean, at the same time, who knows? Seems to me like it would be quite impressive to witness something like this up close. But then again, we do witness this type of stuff up close every day in your normal town, walking around. Maybe not to this specific scale on this piece of antiquitech or architecture, but banks and other places such as sane asylums or places where you might get your mail, they have this type of architecture because it's old world. It's been there a very long time. So yeah, I can imagine this place is a very spiritual nature to it, and probably also very ethereal in nature as well.